In this video, we're going to explore how you can write code using local large language models. We're going to go through the setup of doing so, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what you need to consider when running local models, particularly for code. And then I saw this as an example to pit two popular models up against each other. That's Devstral and Qwen Coder. Now, at the time of recording this intro, Mistral have launched Mistral 3, but unfortunately, as we'll go into, it's not been converted to MLX just yet. More on that a little bit later on. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts on running local coding setups, and also if you want to see more content just like this. Anyway, let's get on with the video. Let's go with setting up a local LLM. I use LM Studio and I'm using a Mac, and the most important thing here is when we go to search models, we actually want to untick GGUF. It's not that it can't run on a MacBook Pro or anything like that. It's just that MLX is specifically made for Macs. So we can already untick those. And then you can take a look at all the different models depending on what you want to do. Of course, I'm interested in things like Qwen Coder. I might type in code here and see what models are popping up. There are some quantized versions here which you might be interested in from the community. And the thing I'm looking at is obviously the size of the model itself. Now, I have 64 gigs of unified memory, or if you've got enough VRAM in your PC to pay attention to this, but you can see that it varies. Now we've got the MLX version, we've got actually a 30 billion parameters being how much data it's been trained on. Presumably it's a better model the higher parameters it has. Not necessarily, you have to try this stuff out, but you could go pretty big. We could go with that one, and even hell, let's just download that. Right, allow me to nerd out just for a second whilst we wait for these models to download. I just want to talk about the capabilities of the current Mac Studio. So obviously the benefit to having a Mac Studio is it's the ability to up that unified memory to 512, which is amazing. But realistically, looking on LM Studio, most of these models aren't taking up 512 gigs of space. CodeStraw's 23. We've got some bigger ones here. If we go to Qwen Coder here, 18.5. Obviously, as things get bigger, you might look to potentially go for 256, but just be mindful of what models, of the size of the models that you're running. I don't think 512 is necessary. I don't even think 256 is necessary, but 128 seems like a good sweet spot for being cheap and also capable of running local models for coding. Obviously, upgrading to a reasonable size hard drive is important, but the thing I really want to draw your attention to is the fact that we're in a weird spot now where M5 has just been released, and it seems every release seems to be tuned to AI. Tell me if I'm wrong about that, but we've obviously got the M5 that's been released. The M3 is currently the best chip that's available generally for a lot of things, right? And that's obviously a $2,500 increase in price. The problem is the M4 Max in AI is outperforming the M3 Ultra in AI. However, on basic inference, the M3 Ultra came out on top, but in everyday usage, the benefits are negligible. It'll be interesting to see when the M5 Max comes out, and then of course the M5 Ultra, but you've really got to weigh up the choice between what's available now, the price. I'm tempted to say an M4 Max chip is good sweet spot because you could probably buy them secondhand, especially when the M5 Max or Pro come out. You can probably buy them secondhand and they will work very, very well with AI. Yet to be seen what the M5 Max looks like, but then you're going to be spending this much money on an M5 Max to get really good AI performance when you could save a hell of a lot by going M4 Max, 128 gig of memory, and some decent hard drive. Here we go, here's a big one. It's Qwen Coder 480 billion parameter model, and this can run on that M Studio Ultra. Mini Max is also an option for those with bigger RAM, and Kimi K2 if you've got a lot of RAM. A lot of these have very, very small context windows, and this is a big thing that I see online. YouTubers will just open up a brand new code base and they will spin up a page of JavaScript function or something really small, where the likelihood is you're going to want to run this in an existing code base. Now, a lot of the models I've seen run, their context size is like 32,000 parameters. just not big enough. You're going to want to go for something that's at least 128,000 context size window. And so for that, Mistral AI has a context size of 131,000. So I'm going to set that there. So setting up is relatively simple. And let's load in the Devstral. Now it's already setting that context size, but just double check that it's there. You might need to reload it. Some KV cache quantization, but this was showing really interesting results, and it is an experimental thing, but we'll try that on another model just to show you. Now inside of Cursor, I use Kilo Code. There's another extension called Continue, which I've seen. Natively, Cursor doesn't support pointing to local LLMs. You kind of need to throw it up using ngrok and then point it to a remote server like there. But a Kilo Code allows you to point to a local LLM. So the way to do that is if we go here, if we go into our settings and we set up a new profile, let's call this LM Studio. And then if we just search LM Studio in here, the base URL is going to be, we've got a running server here, it's going to be this one here. So we copied that, and then the models show up here. So we're using Mistral Devstral small, and it's this one here. We save that, we're done, and then down here we can select our model. Now I'm in ask mode just so we can get a result here, and I'm going to say, tell me about this code base. And what I'm going to do is open Activity Monitor, bring up my GPU usage with Command 4, and we should start seeing this ramp up my GPU usage. There's all my cores being used to full effect. My fan isn't on just yet, but what I'm also noticing is that the 131,000 context size window, which is good. This isn't a huge code base, but it is a normal, reasonable code base. Something to expect. Now, other things I'm thinking about here is MCP servers that are running, rules that are set up. These are all eating up context. So, and in fact, I probably should have disabled some of the MCP servers that Kilo Code has access to. My fans are spinning up now. And if we go into LM Studio, we can see this prompt process slowly chugging on by. Now, I am not rich yet. I can't afford this is an M1 Max 64 gig. It's top of the line, but it's an old machine. This is going to run slow. Your mileage may vary on the actual speed. Obviously, the newer the chip, the faster it's going to go. But everything we've spoken about so far, parameter-wise, quantization-wise, these all remain consistent no matter what age chip that you have. We set this off at 11:41 in the morning. Let's see what time this finishes on my 4-year-old M1 Max. And we're done, and it looks to me like a pretty good rundown, to be honest. It's got some specifics about the routes, features, sponsorship page. I like that it's glazing me there. It's a pretty detailed result. What I want to do now is actually quantize this, and we reload to apply. And what quantization does, it actually just reduces the memory footprint. You can see it's experimental, so the results are kind of a bit all over the place. Let's try that and see if we can get a better result. So let's tell me about this code base. Let's see if this gives us a better result. That's the other thing as well. The second round trip to these LLMs tends to be a bit quicker. So we had a few round trips on the last one. I'm assuming that the second attempt was quicker. It does seem to be a bit quicker, but let's see what the response is. Okay, it's done. And I would say the assessment is pretty accurate. It's pretty good. Another thing that I want to try out, and that is autocomplete. Now, I'm assuming the autocomplete is using this model. Model not suitable autocomplete. Please configure, provide it in the API settings. Now, it is working. Now I will contact Kilo or overlay it on the screen now whether autocomplete is using the current model, even though it is complaining about it. Let's go for the other contender here, which is Qwen Coder 30 billion. This has got a 262,000 context window. So if we load this model, select it, tell me about this code base. Let's check back in a minute. Or if I'm being realistic, let's check back in about half an hour. Okay, that's done. It felt a lot quicker, and the response was probably a bit more robust. First of all, I noticed it made a to-do list, which is not what the others did. And overall, the outlining of the structure looks much more comprehensive. I don't know. I think we all have preferences here, so you tell me what you think. The other thing I want to take note of is the actual, the token usage up here. So this used 42.6 thousand tokens. Now, if I go into my history here, 43,000 tokens and 36,000 tokens. So this was the quantized version of Devstral. So the only thing I really want to do now to kind of test these things is actually get them to write some code. Now, I'll be here all day if I get them to do something too crazy, but let's stick with Qwen Coder. We'll go into code mode and stay on LM Studio. And then we'll also make sure we'll go sponsorship, swap, hero section, and introduction section around. Let's give that a task and see what happens. Okay, so that took a long time taking note of exactly how long it took. The first edit failed, which again, in which case it would have ended a lot sooner, but it took ages to actually edit that file. Let's give the same prompt to Devstral and see how it goes on. Go into code mode. Okay, making the edit. This is the second time the API request has failed on the Devstral model. Not quite sure why these tests are taking so long. That really it's hard to pin down exactly what's going on with it. So really the one that comes out as the winner is indeed Qwen Coder. So hardware aside, I've obviously not got the best hardware for doing this sort of stuff. Running models locally it's an experience that's kind of still quite hard to recommend. There's no real good reason why the API request would fail on this one. But as a pure guess, if it did work, I think we're really just splitting hairs on the abilities of these different models, coming down probably to personal preference as with all models. And so really, I think the benefit, or what I'd like to see from Kilo Code and other code editors and things like that, is the ability to have autocomplete set as a local model. I think this is where it will really, really thrive, rather than these big agentic tasks that take up loads of context, need a lot of inputs and outputs. Whereas with autocomplete, you're in the one file, it's just got to read the one file and manage that context. I think that's where these local models will come in clutch. So far, I haven't seen any plugin with that sort of feature to direct the autocomplete to one model and then the agentic tasks to another model. So this was a hell of a day of testing. I really appreciate you sticking around. I hope you've learned something. And if there's anything you can teach me down below, I'm more than welcome to hear it. I'm just a guy playing around with this stuff, trying to understand it better so that I can relay it to you. Anyway, you can support the channel over on my Patreon. That's patreon.com/0x5am5. Like, subscribe if you haven't already and you want to see more of this sort of stuff. Let me know down in the comments if you do. And until next time, keep on vibing.